guys, it's Katie. Welcome back to my channel. I have a book review for you today. First, I just want to show you my shirt, May Contain Wine, because I know if I was watching and I could only see the top part, it would drive me nuts. And for the record, no, I do not contain wine yet, but she may contain wine because probably later today I will. We're all still here in quarantine, and I finished this book and I've already started my next, and so I'm hoping to get a lot of good reading done during these times. So this is The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. This is a book that I've heard about. I was recommended this book actually like 5 years ago, and as you can see, it won an award. It has like all these, you know, prestigious like accolades, and this is, let me see, I brought up my book journal. What's interesting about this book though is that it's nonfiction, and what's even more interesting about it is that it's nonfiction, but it is the story of the Chicago 1893 World's Fair. And what I was saying about why it's even more interesting, I don't know, I feel like, at least in my experience and what I even see, a lot of nonfiction books, or like most nonfiction books, most that I have read, are people's biographies, or they're like self-help books, or they're like, it's like a different kind of nonfiction. Do you know what I mean? This kind of still reads like a fiction or like a novel. It is still like telling you a story, but it's all true and it's all real and it's all based off like a ton of research and facts and real people and things like that. And I think that's kind of what this Erik Larson guy is known for. I have another one of his books that I think is about Berlin during World War II. And anyway, so the back of this, like a huge chunk of this is the bibliography. Like, you know, it got to a point where I realized, oh, the last like 100 pages are a bibliography, or maybe it's less than 100. But anyway, that's the gist of what this book is about. Now let me see what I wrote down about it. First and foremost, I rated this book a 3.5 out of 5 on this scale. Part of that rating is just because for me, I don't know that like nonfiction, super fact heavy books, like, are my total thing, but I'm super happy that I read it and I really did enjoy it. It was just like not a light or easy read. It took me like about a month to read it, maybe a little bit less than a month. And you know, some of it I really did feel like I would have to like reread certain lines or paragraphs over and over, just because, you know what I mean? Like, I kind of have an ADHD brain. Like, I was diagnosed with that in high school, but that's neither here nor there. So in a way it felt like reading a textbook, but like a really, really good, really interesting textbook. But nonetheless, it wasn't just like an escapism type like beach read. Do you know what I mean? I wonder how I would have done reading this book on an airplane, because I always say that airplanes are the place where I can, like, my ADHD just has to like take a back seat, because I'm just sitting there and I get really good reading done on airplanes. But yeah, this was just not one that I could read much more than maybe like 20 or so pages at a time. Whereas like other books, you can just kind of fly through. And I always talk about the chapter length. This was broken into parts, and it's very interesting because there's like a few different like actual pictures and things like that. Within the parts, there are a fair amount of like chapters, and even within the chapters, you can see that they're separated by little just like lines, because it would kind of bounce around. So in terms of that, it wasn't like a certain thing would drag on and on, like, no, not at all. But it was still very fact heavy and hard for me to get through. Okay, I feel like I haven't even really told you anything about it, so sorry. It's good, it's great, 3.5 rating. Let me tell you more. The World's Fair was like this big to-do, and it was something where they were, I don't really fully know the origin of it, but they were debating like which state and which city in America was going to be the host of the World's Fair, and it was like a big deal. And at the time, Chicago like definitely didn't have a super good reputation. Anywhere that was like a city, especially Chicago, it was just very like dingy, dirty, gross. And yeah, so like a lot of places wanted it to be New York. Like New York was almost the place that had it. I know New York had another World's Fair. I don't know if that was before or after. I want to say after. But I think DC was in the running, like some other big cities. And so it was a pretty big deal that Chicago ended up getting the World's Fair. And the story really mostly revolves around two guys. With that said, there's a ton of characters and a ton of history, again, about like real people. And yeah, like there's way more than just these two people, but it's mostly about Daniel Burnham, who was like basically the main architect and creative director slash person in charge of the World's Fair. And then it's also about a guy named Dr. H.H. Holmes, which I did not know who that was, but you might. It's a pretty famous name because he is one of like the worst serial killers of all time. And so these two things were happening at the same time, that like Dr. H.H. Holmes like killings and everything were like during this, and a lot of them were in Chicago, and it's just really, really fascinating stuff. And you learn so much history. Like they talk about one of their big goals during all of this is that they're trying to out Eiffel, because apparently the guy who built the Eiffel Tower, his last name is Eiffel, which makes total sense, but like I didn't know that. And at the time, the Eiffel Tower was kind of like the most majestic, like best piece of architecture that had been built. And so they were trying to like do something that was going to be bigger and better than what Eiffel had done. It also talks about the origin of the Ferris wheel, and like the guy who built the Ferris wheel, his last name was Ferris, just like crazy stuff. And then it talks about like different brands. Like Aunt Jemima stands out to me, and I'm not trying to like spoil anything. I feel like these aren't really spoilers. I don't know. But there's different brands and things like, what was another one? Not cream of wheat, shredded wheat. Like things that were like introduced for the first time in the world at this time. And, you know, there's like a ton of little tidbits of that information. And then the stuff you read about like Dr. H.H. Holmes, it's fascinating. It's like terrifying. It's crazy. One big thing about this is that a long time ago, I think back in 2010, Leonardo DiCaprio bought the rights to like the screenplay of this. I don't really know what that means. Like there wasn't a screenplay made, but he bought whatever it was that, you know, if there was to be a project made about this, like he owned it. And what I've Googled and seen that the recent update is that it's going to be a mini series, which I think that's amazing because so it's been, you know, 2010 was forever ago. But I think it would be kind of hard to make this a movie. I mean, it could totally be done, like so many things have been made into movies, but I think this being like a show slash mini series will be amazing because there is so much history and so many storylines within that will really give a chance for everything to kind of develop and unfold, and I'm very excited for that. I do not think I would reread this. Maybe. It would probably be actually better the second time because, again, you kind of already have that base knowledge and it might help me to pick up on other little pieces of information that I missed the first time. But in a way, it felt like a homework assignment reading this. So I don't want to deter anyone. If you like history and you like fiction books or nonfiction, and like if any of that sounds interesting to you, like I learned so much about Chicago and it was so cool. It really was. It was very, very cool, but it very much felt like something I'm glad to have read, but it was like I kind of had to make myself read it. Does that make sense? Again, no shade to Eric Larson, and I do still kind of want to read his other book on my shelf, although I'm like a little nervous just because, like I said, it's just not like a beach read, like a Hair to the Wind vacation read. That's not what it is. It's more academic, which is good for the mind and the soul. And at this point, I'm just rambling, so I'm gonna stop. But if you've read this, I wanna know your thoughts, your comments, your concerns. Who would play these characters? Oh my gosh, that's a good question. I think Leo would like, hopefully play one of them. Who would play Dr. Holmes though? Or like, would Leo play Daniel Burnham, or would he play? I don't know, I feel like Leo would need to play Daniel Burnham instead of H.H. Holmes. who's that guy who like always plays a bad guy? His name starts with a C. I think he's in that movie with Rachel McAdams, Red Eye. Do you know what I'm talking about? That guy, he has like a weird name. Anyway, like I can see that guy playing H.H. Holmes just because he's like always on the wrong side of history in movies. But yeah, tell me who you think should play each character. And now I'm gonna go. And I might contain my body with some wine because going crazy slowly. Thanks for watching, you guys. I will see you next time. Love you. Oh, and if you want to know what I just started, it's Daisy Jones and the Six. And so far, I really love it. So that's a little preview, and I'll see you later. Bye.